Welcome for all of you who are watching. You're tuned into TMH and this is our daily English news. Our headlines for today: the EU High Representative says the level of mortality caused by the war in Tigray is unseen in any other place in the world right now. AU team is to be expected in Ma'ala city soon. And WHO chief says Eritrean troops murdered his uncle in Ethiopia's Tigray region. As we begin our main updates for today, the EU High Representative says the level of mortality caused by the war in Tigray is unseen in any other place in the world right now. Josep Borrell, in an opening speech made yesterday on human rights, stated what is happening in Tigray is the deadliest war. We complain rightly about what is happening in Ukraine, but what is happening in Ethiopia is really awful. He noted that for months and months, there have been continuous violations of human rights in Tigray at a massive scale. Let's take a listen.
Not enough people talk about it. We don't talk a lot about Ethiopia. Yes, from time to time when there is peace discussions, but what has happening in Tigray is the most deadly war. We complain rightly about what's happening in Ukraine, but what happened in Ethiopia is really awful. The figures that we have is that between 600,000 and 800,000 people being killed. Can you imagine? And most of them by famine, not fighting, but by famine, cutting humanitarian support, cutting electricity, cutting any kind of public services, and that for months and months. And I remember that this being done by a government which its president or prime minister is a Nobel Prize laureate. We went to Ethiopia at the first visit of the College of the Commissioners because Ethiopia was a light of hope in Africa, and the Ethiopian government was presented as someone who made peace in Tigray with the Eritreans, and things looked very good, and some month later the war started. You can't discuss politically who is to be blamed for the reason for the war to start, but the result is that for months and months this has been a continuous violation of human rights at a massive scale. And we talk about 800,000 people being killed. There is not such a mortality in any other place in the world caused by a war.
He made sure to remind the gathering that this is being done by a government whose prime minister is a Nobel Prize laureate. AU team is expected in Ma'ala city soon, according to awat.com reporting that the AU-appointed observer team is expected to arrive in Ma'ala to monitor the situation in Tigray currently. It comprises 9 generals from South Africa, Kenya, Nigeria, and an expert whose specialty is not confirmed yet will lead the team. The arrival of the team was delayed due to the technical issues, including the presence of Eritrea and Amhara regional forces, in addition to the delaying of restoration of basic utility services within the city of Ma'ala. Though most of the Eritrean forces have withdrawn from a few cities, contingent are left behind in locations not far from the city that they withdrew from. Again, according to awat.com, a diaspora-based Eritrean website referring to sources saying that the Eritrean government has security concerns that it wants addressed before a complete withdrawal. However, both the Eritrean and Ethiopian governments have not explained the issues regarding their withdrawal. According to Awat, Eritrea is talking to the AU mediators through Kenya, whose ex-president Kenyatta is one of the main mediators as well. Scholars say more data on the Tigray genocide is coming to light. Professor Tony Magna, who's the academic neurosurgeon at Eider Comprehensive Specialized Hospital, made this remark in an interview with Ma'ala Foresight after attending a webinar organized by the Tigrayan Diaspora Council in Europe on the ongoing Tigray genocide.
Very well-known scientists, academicians who study human events, along with their universities, are scientifically and methodically beginning to study the genocide. They're collecting witnesses, they're collecting names, dates, situations, and outcomes. and they're creating an online database. And this includes Dr. Jan Nyssen from Trent University, from Ghent University in Belgium, and others. And these are highly credible people, and their methods are highly credible, highly accurate methods, as much as they can be without being allowed to visit the scene. And I think this shows you that this issue of a documentation of the atrocities that happened is not going to go away, and that there are methods, especially as people are leaving the country and getting communication, as much as the Ethiopian and Eritrean governments want to obscure and make it difficult to get this information, it's going to come out. And sooner or later, they're promising a return of telephone and internet. So I think more and more information we will get.
The professor concluded by alluding to a notable German source who said the World Bank and the IMF are not satisfied by Abiy Ahmed's performance in the implementation of such Pretoria agreement. WHO chief says his uncle was murdered in Ethiopia's Tigray region. The head of the World Health Organization on Wednesday said that the Eritrean troops murdered his uncle in the Tigray region of Ethiopia. Eritrean Information Minister Yemane ገብረመስቀል did not respond to requests for comment on all these allegations. WHO Director General Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus, a former Ethiopian minister who comes from Tigray, has been a vocal critic of Ethiopia's and Eritrea's role in the conflict that has killed hundreds and thousands and displaced millions of others. In the closing minutes of a Geneva press briefing focused on COVID-19, Tedros said that he nearly canceled the event because he was not in a good shape after hearing of his uncle's murder. Let's take a listen.
And I hope the peace agreement will hold and this madness would stop. But it's just a very difficult moment for me. And he was not alone, by the way. In the village, when they killed him in his home, from same village, more than 50 people were killed.
The Ethiopian government and regional forces from Tigray agreed in November to cease hostilities last month in a major breakthrough. However, troops from Eritrea to the north and forces from the neighboring Ethiopian region of Amhara to the south, who fought alongside Ethiopia's military in Tigray, were not party to the ceasefire. Witnesses and aid workers in the northern region told Reuters that despite the truce, Eritrean forces have been looting towns, arresting and killing civilians in these towns, and as they still control across the region. Ethiopia's government spokesman Legessa Tulu, military spokesman Colonel Getannet Adana, and Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed's spokeswoman Bilena Siyom did not immediately respond to a request for comment on Tedros' remarks. Asked for details of the incident on the sidelines of the event, Tedros said that his younger uncle, whom he grew up with, has been killed by Eritrean soldiers in a village in Tigray and has declined to give the location because he is feared the village would face retaliation. That followed the killing of his cousin last year in Tigray when a church was blown up, and he said without giving any further details as well. As Tigray continued to calm down, Ethiopia is seeing growing conflicts in the Oromia region. AP reported that as only one deadly conflict in Ethiopia begins to calm, another is growing tremendously, challenging a government that's eager to persuade the international community to lift sanctions and revive what was once Africa's fastest growing economy. Even as Ethiopian Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed attends the U.S.-Africa summit this week, promoting last month's peace agreement between his government and authorities from the country's Tigray region, the larger region of Oromia appears increasingly unstable. Africa's second most populous country, with 120 million people, is again wrestling with deadly tensions between ethnic groups and their armed allies, both Oromo and Amhara ethnic groups as well. The country's largest alleged killings and blame others, with telecommunications often cut and residents often fearing retaliation if they speak out, the death toll and violence in Oromia is completely unknown. Speaking to the Associated Press on conditions of anonymity and out of fear for their safety, several residents of Oromia described deadly attacks within recent weeks. One witness in the region's Kiramu district said his father and cousin were among at least 34 people killed since the 24th of November, and he blamed soldiers under the control of the Oromia regional government, saying he saw their uniforms. An ethnic Oromo resident of Kiramu, however, accused an Amhara armed group militia known as the Fano for attacking and killing civilians, and said that he had seen more than a dozen bodies and buried 4 of them on the 29th of November. This militia group is killing our people, burning villages, and looting everything we own, said Dugasa Fiasa, who told the AP, saying they shoot at anyone they find, be it public servants, police officers, or teachers. The deputy administrator of the Gida Ayana district, which also has seen some of Oromia's worst violence in recent weeks, also blamed the Amhara Fano fighters. Civilians in our area are being killed, displaced, and looted. This group is heavily armed, so it is no match for farmers who are completely defenseless, said Getahun Dodara, who's nothing that his district has now hosts about 31,000 people who fled nearby districts, saying we are still doing house-to-house bodies and discovering more. Ethiopian federal government officials declined to comment on the killings in the Oromia region and have yet openly spoken about them either. The Prime Minister last week said only that some enemies with extreme views were trying to destabilize the country without giving details. Ethiopian security forces, Oromo insurgents, and the Amhara militia are all battling each other in the Oromia region, Ethiopia's largest region, said William Davidson, who's an analyst with the International Crisis Group. Amid an intensifying government struggle against the armed group, all 3 have targeted civilians, particularly of the ethnic Amhara, which has now led to an increase in violence by the Amhara militia claiming to be defending their communities. Rallies protesting the killings have been held in some communities in recent days, and last week, the government-appointed Ethiopian Human Rights Commission said that hundreds of people have been killed in a gruesome manner in the past 4 months across 10 different zones in the Oromia region. It is confirmed that the presence of the government forces in the Amhara militia and the OLA in the areas where repeated killings have occurred. The deliberate attacks against civilians in these areas are based on ethnicity and political views, with the assertion that one supports one group over the other, as the Commission said, urging the federal government to take action as quickly as possible. As we move on to our final update for today, and as the U.S.-Africa Leaders Summit has now come to a conclusion, Antony Blinken was seen pictured speaking with Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed this week. And during his briefing, when asked if this was a sign in good faith of the Pretoria Agreement being fully implemented in Ethiopia, he had this to say.
With regard to Ethiopia, there too, we have a very important cessation of hostilities agreement that has led over the last few weeks to a significant reduction in violence in Tigray. The start of humanitarian assistance getting in significant quantities, the beginning of the restoration of services, and we hope as well the need to verify with international monitors that human rights abuses are no longer taking place. Implementation of this agreement, just as with the Luanda agreement, is the critical piece. The agreement's there. We need to make sure it's implemented, and that ideally the implementation is done as quickly and as effectively as possible.
The Secretary of State emphasized that for the implementation to be successful, Eritrean forces need to leave Ethiopia completely and immediately.
Another critical component of this agreement is for Eritrean forces to withdraw from Tigray. And we're looking to that, and I've had discussions with a number of the leaders who are here about the need to see that happen. So in both of these cases, I think we have now positive foundations to try to reduce tensions, resolve conflicts, create a stronger foundation for durable peace. But these things are fragile. They demand constant engagement, constant effort. And part of what we did here in Washington this week with the relevant actors was to work on the roadmap ahead for implementing these agreements. So there'll be a lot of follow-up in the days to come.
Meanwhile, on Friday, the 16th of December, Ethiopian Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed was scheduled to give a closed-door, not-for-attribution talk at the Council on Foreign Relations in D.C. Waiting for him were demonstrators from both the Oromo and Tigray community chanting for accountability and justice to be served. Let's take a listen.
Genocide victims. Justice for the genocide victims. Justice for genocide victims. Justice for war victims. Justice for war victims. Justice for war victims. Justice for war victims. Justice for rape victims. Justice for rape victims.
After waiting upon his arrival all morning, multiple resources reported that he in fact canceled the meeting and was a no-show after all.
Tigrai does fall. We achieve our goal today. The dictator is not attending the meeting here. We achieve our goal today. So, proud of you, son. Proud of you, son. Proud of you, son. Yes, yes. But we are going to stay here for the next hour to make sure he's not coming back when we leave. So we want to stay here. We want to stay here to make sure Abiy Ahmed, the dictator, Abiy Ahmed, the genocider, sent back today to Ethiopia. Sent back today to Ethiopia. Deported back today to Ethiopia.
That concludes our news for today. Thank you so much for tuning in. Have a wonderful weekend. Bye-bye.